That's
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for, like, I know a lot of these college students are graduating trying to get into television. Like, what would you tell them trying to become a news director? Because people sleep on being a news director, like
Right. Yeah. People
a
really
show
do.
director.
People really do sleep on being a newscast director and stuff like that because, and I've done this before. I've been back to, I graduated from Norfolk State University where I've come back. They've gone back and had me talk to kids and stuff. And a lot of times you talk to these kids, first thing they say, what you want to do? I want to be a reporter. I want to be an anchor, or I want to, say, I want to go back to my hometown. And some of them be like, I want to go back to Atlanta. I want to go back to DC. I want to be an anchor, reporter. And I'm
Right.
like, oh, all right. Yeah. All right. And I'd always ask them, like, so I go around, what do y'all want to do? What you want to do? And then and I'd be like, all right, cool. So let me tell you what you are going to do. And they're like, what? I said, what's going to happen is for you people that want to be anchors, reporters, or whatever on air, you're not going to start in your hometown of Atlanta unless you know the general manager, the news director at that station. You're going to start off in a market that is market 150, 130. You're going to be in Podunk, Mississippi, middle of nowhere, North Dakota, starting off in your field. And it's not going to be glamorous. You're not in these lower markets. You're not going to have your own photog cameraman. You are going to be what they call a one-man band. And Tasha, you know all about the one-man band in it. You're going to shoot your own footage. You're going to do the stand-up, and you got to set the frame the camera up on yourself, and all you got to do, you got to edit your stuff and everything. Even for people that want to be I'm about to call it what they want to be producers. You're going to start off in a smaller market. A lot of times you're going to be in a position where you're going to be called a predator, which is you are a producer and an editor at the same time. You got to produce and edit your own video for your stories. There are stations out here where the news director is the lead anchor in the evening for the 6 p.m. news and stuff like that. One thing I say about especially this industry, yes, it's good to know your stuff, but it's based on the hookup.
Right.
I'll tell you right now. So just a little quick thing with my journey. I went to Norfolk State, graduated in 4 years in 2002. When I graduated, I did not have a job and I didn't know what I was going to do. I got this degree. I went to school for 4 years and was like, man, what I'm going to do? I'm trying to get a job in my field because I went to school for this. So I ended up becoming a substitute teacher for a year. I had my degree and I substituted. I had a class that became my class for a year. And then one day, my best friend, his name happened to be Antonio too. We were talking. He was a mass comm media major like me as well. And we both were talking, and it is just so funny because I had thought about it. He was like, hey, man, you ever think about grad school? I said, hey, that's crazy. I thought about it too. And then us being two stupid, homeboys, best friends, I was like, all right, I'll do it if you do it. And he was like, all right, dead serious. This is exactly how it went. This wasn't no plan of, I'm going to graduate. I'm going to go to master's. I was like, I'll do it if you do it. Master's. I was like, hey, man, I'll do it if you do it. All right, bet, cool. And so I did. We applied and literally got accepted like a week later back at Norfolk State in the program. Luckily, we didn't have to take that GRE exam or write because the head of the department was like, y'all graduate from here. We know y'all know the stuff. Y'all good. And I just remember going back to my mom being like, hey, Mom, I'm back in school. She said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm going to get my master's. She was like, what? She was like, you want to go back? Whatever. I was like, yeah, I know. I can't believe it. So I went back and I got my master's in media management. And that was a 2-year program. Finished that. And then once again, I still ain't have a job. And at that point, I was working at QVC, where there was a young lady who I became really good friends with in grad school. She's like my sister to this day. I love her to death. Thank you, Deanne. Her father was the chief photog at the station that we worked at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I don't think you knew this, but when I worked with you, that was my second stint.
What? No,
yeah,
you did that for a while.
No, that was my second stint. Okay, so my first job. So he knew I worked. He knew I was trying to get in, and he was like, "Hey, man, what you trying to do?" I said, "You said you got a job yet?" I said, "No, Mr. B, I'm trying." He was like, "Give me your resume." He took my resume, and this is like literally like 5 months after graduating. I was working at QVC at the call center with a master's degree. I couldn't get no job, nothing. And so he gives it to the production manager, and the production manager takes it, and I get hired like a week later. And I was a part-time production operator. And this is back when you actually had people behind the cameras. It won't
Yeah,
robo cameras or anything like that.
right.
And when I got hired, he says that was my final good deed in this business. So what are you talking about? He was like, yeah, I'm retiring in 2 weeks. I had no idea. So that was his thing. So shout out to Mr. B for getting me my first job in the industry. Like I said, and that goes to show you, you have to have connections and be, and this isn't high school where you have your cliques and like, oh, I'm not hanging out with them because this and
Right,
that.
right.
You have to have these connections and make these connections and be nice to people. And
Yes.
that's only because me and his daughter were like this, and he
Mhm.
looked out for me. And so I was at the station we was at for a year and a half, and
Okay.
I was working 2 jobs too at the time. I was working
Oh,
there for a year and a half, and then I worked at what used to be called Clear Channel Media, which is radio station. I was doing radio sales and
oh,
doing
wow.
part-time productions. So I was there for 8 years, and they told me, hey, Tonio, we really want to keep you, great attitude and everything. And I wasn't directing yet, by the way. And they were just like, yeah, we just gonna have to let you go. And I was like, all right, bet, cool. Yeah, I understand it.
Yeah.
And I just went, and so I was just wrapping my mind around it. And they was like, yeah, it's gonna happen in a couple of months, but you still good. So what I did was I just started looking just to see if anything was out there because I didn't want to wait and then nothing happened.
Mhm.
Well, back at the old job, they had a master control operation
Okay.
position open doing overnights, third graveyard shift. I applied for it and got the job like 2 weeks after being told that I was going to get laid off.
News is a tough business.
It is.
News
It
is a
is.
tough business. I think I
Mhm.
went from there to a station I can't say the name of, but yeah,
Mhm.
news is
Mhm.
a tough business. But I did go up markets. Uh,
Mhm.
but it's I started in news when I was 20,
Yeah.
yeah, my early 20s. So
Okay.
it took away all my social life. And we didn't have really social media back then. Like we didn't have
Mhm.
Instagram. I think
No.
Facebook was just getting started.
If you really don't want to do, if you will find out quick, fast, and in a hurry if you want to stick with this, or you like, you know what, I'm just gonna learn what I can learn and
Yeah.
branch off into doing other things.
And that's what I did. I used it for like I learned how to edit, I learned how to shoot, I learned how
Mhm.
to create a rundown, tell a story. So that's how
Mhm.
I like transferred all into a business.
Right.
So it
Yeah.
was really helpful, even though it was very draining. It was a draining job for me.
Yeah.
Um,
And
y-
and
y-
and me knowing you, I knew it was because there were times we would talk and you would just be like, Tonio, I just and I think at first you were thinking it was the station we was at the time. You was like,
right.
I just need to get out of here
Yeah.
because it's that. And then when you went to the other station you went to and
Yeah.
everything, and I remember asking you like, how was it? We kept in contact
Yeah.
sporadically. I was like, yo, how was it? And you was like, it's cool. It feels a little better. But then I think about a month or two later, you was like, this ain't it. And then I think you were just like, yeah, I think I just need to find a way to transition out of this business. And
Yeah.
and I even did the same thing because believe it or not, I was at the job and it was cool and everything was all right. But I was getting, and then me being the local boy, being like, I got so tired of
Yeah.
doing stories about murder, death, house fires. Some of these people I
That was great.
knew. Some of
Yeah.
the people I knew, I like. There were about 5 people
Yeah.
within like a 3 week period that died that
Oh,
I grew up with that I knew, and I was just like, I am so sick
yeah.
and
Some of the stories
tired.
were tough. Some of the stories were
Yeah.
I secretly cried at some of the stuff.
Right. Yeah. You was like, it's crazy because some stories you get desensitized to, but other stories you like what always affect me and still affect me to this day, stories about kids getting that
Yeah.
hurt bad or else stuff
Yeah.
happening to like women and stuff like bad stuff like that happen to women. It still bothers me to this day. So I left probably a little bit after you to become a teacher. This
Oh,
time, like I went back and I taught TV production at my old high school. And at that time, I think I was like 37, 36. And a lot
mhm.
of those kids thought I was like in my mid to late 20s or whatnot.
Yeah,
So
early 20s.
they would try you with some stuff. And
Yeah.
so what ends up happening is one of my friends that I work with at one of the stations, she hits me up and is like, hey, because she's up in the DMV area, Tonio, blah, blah, blah. I know you was trying to get a job at one point up here where I'm at, and that was at a job where she was working at NBC Sports up in
Okay.
Washington. And I was like, yeah, she says, well, we looking for a technical director. And I
Right.
moved up to DC. Luckily, I had not DC, but up in Maryland. Luckily, my
Mhm.
aunt lived up in Maryland. I stayed with her for a little bit, and I had this job. And let me tell you something, Tasha, in
Mhm.
my mind, this was my last job I was gonna ever have. To this day, my favorite job I ever have. I loved it. I was covering at the time their name was the Redskins,
Mhm.
the Washington Capitals, the Wizards, and
Mhm.
those were the teams that we all, you know what I'm saying, I covered. I was directing and technical directing pre and post game shows
Oh,
for
wow.
all the teams. I was meeting players.
Also, just the type of people you can meet, because I remember when I was producing and I in Jacksonville, Florida, and I got
Uh,
to all kinds of celebrities like Kim Kardashian, all them celebrities. Like people would talk to me and they didn't know that I would have to go to work and then Kim Kardashian be sitting in the next room
yeah.
for a show.
Hmm.
So just like networking and then the
Hmm.
type of people that you get to meet. News taught me that celebrities are just normal people.
Yeah.